I've watched a documentary about ADHD, and they were saying that how evolutionarily why we still have ADHD and why it's still part of the human
Mm.
sort of diagnostic that we get with a lot of kids coming up is
Because
because um, in the survivability mode, you need to have people that are willing to take risk a lot, and people who obviously are diagnosed or who suffer from ADHD have that ability to not have to overthink things to do them, so they
yeah,
take a lot of risk. And
I
I
don't
was
really
thinking that
believe
was
in
pretty
ADHD
interesting.
though.
yeah, I think
Honestly,
Hmm?
ADHD is
I
just
don't really believe in ADHD.
No, no, I do, I
Well,
do. I used to be, I used to not think, believe in it, but then when I
yeah,
was
but
but
diagnosed, and then when Reese
Miguel,
was
there's
diagnosed
different
with it,
type of people though in the world.
yeah,
Like there are people that enjoy exercising and people that enjoy,
yeah,
being
but just
adventurous
because,
and people.
yeah.
no,
No,
no, but
because
what you're
someone with
saying is
ADHD.
you don't believe in something that makes people different. Is like just because we have
No,
the
I'm just
ability to
meaning that people are
categorize.
different. I mean that people are different. You don't have to tell someone that they have a condition because they're different.
No, but you're saying that the condition is bad.
Well,
Well,
ADHD has a
ADHD.
bad connotation to it. They
Either
medicate
you
kids
believe
for it.
in it, either you believe in it or you don't. You see
I
what I mean?
don't.
That's
I
why
believe that
I
just
think.
some kids are some type of way, and
Okay, so
society.
how would you what? So how would you define that some type of way then?
Well, I would say that
You see
society
what I
has
mean?
decided.
You're
No, no,
saying you're saying I
society.
believe in this thing, but
No,
I
no,
think there's kids that are
no, no,
different.
because
It's
I
like
think
okay, yeah,
society
we've
has
decided to call
decided.
the kids that are different, that portray these symptoms as being falling into this category and being on this spectrum. You
Well,
see
I
what I
guess you
mean?
can call it whatever you want, but my
That's what I
point is that
mean. That's what I mean.
but ADHD has a bad connotation, and there's medication for it, mate. Like
Yes,
kids
because
get
because
medicated
because of
for a
course,
specific condition, which
because
isn't a
society.
condition. I'm just saying that is not a condition because there are some kids with
Yeah,
ADHD
exactly.
that they say, oh, their ADHD is harder than another ADHD. Like, you
No,
can
but
have a bigger case of
it's
ADHD.
absolutely no, no, but it's absolutely a condition because let's take it
Of
to,
course, it's a
because actually
condition, but
what a lot of people don't understand is that it's on a spectrum, but the spectrum isn't only, if you think about it, it's not ADHD, it's hyper hyperactivity and attention disorder. So there's the diagnosis is somebody who is not able to focus on certain tasks or do certain critical thinking on certain activities.
Yeah, but the reason they
But that
can't do those
overlaps
certain
with
tasks is because they're not interested in those certain tasks. So their personality, which is
exactly.
because
And what I was gonna say is that
people with
overlaps
ADHD,
into,
if they like something, they'll do it for a long period of time,
oh,
even though they have ADHD.
they can be there the whole day. They can be there the
Exactly,
whole day.
because
What
they're
I'm saying
interested in
is
it.
that then fall, but that then goes into and it overlaps into Asperger's syndrome. So if you're saying, "Oh, I don't believe in ADHD," then you're saying, "I don't believe in any diagnosis for any condition in any sort of symptom that we see that we recognize in children." And what I think what we've done today is we've said, "Okay, we can start building these systems where we can actually look at these patterns in behaviors in children, and we can start to,
how do they diagnose ADHD?
well, there's multiple criteria that you have to look at,
But
and
it's all
then within
psychological.
that
It's not
criteria,
any.
They
You
give
can't.
some kid a bullshit test that
no,
is
no,
like,
no, 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 the tests are not given to the kids. The tests are given to the parents, the tests are given to the teachers, the tests are given to
yeah,
the
but
healthcare professionals.
this structure of teachers, parents, schools, obviously you should have. My thing is you should have ADHD if you go to school. The human mind and spirit wasn't meant to go to school or to preschool or to.
And I agree with you, but I think the argument that you're making is different. So you're trying to say this doesn't exist because I
No, what
believe
I'm
it's
trying to
something
say is
else.
that if
And I'm
ADHD
saying
was a real,
we
like,
know that
if
something is there and we
no,
decided to call it X, Y, and Z.
so
And
why isn't it
because we
split across
decided to call it X,
50-50
Y, and
between men
Z,
and women?
society has decided that we're going to treat it in a certain way. And I agree with you. I think that we shouldn't treat it the way
I'm
that
just
it gets
saying, if it's
treated
a real tangible condition that you can test, why is it not split equally between men and women?
because men and women are different.
So, because men are a different type of way.
And so are women. But there is
Yeah.
ADHD in women and
So,
there's ADHD in men as
yeah,
well. And there's Asperger's syndrome
the
and there's
but the
all sorts
cases
of
from
other.
ADHD from women to men are not comparable, mate. Like ADHD
It
is
depends
so
on
much
it
higher.
depends on a human to human level, on an
So you're
individual
saying that the
basis.
ADHD
You
cases for
can't
men and
generalize.
women are comparable.
No, they're not because well, having looked at the literature and I've done a lot of research into this because obviously there's history in myself and also in my son. So when I looked at it, I saw that there is a massive sort of disparity when you look at women studies and when you look at girl studies and boy studies. But the overall, when you look at it, it's just percentages, and you're always going to find that in all the studies that you look at, you're always going to find percentages. So what are you saying? Oh, because the percentages don't match.
No, I'm
Because
saying
they don't tell me the
because
story that I
obviously
feel they.
no, because obviously men are different than women. And the way men are would lend itself more to being diagnosed as ADHD, even though that doesn't mean anything, because men are more energetic, they have testosterone, they can't
Oh,
focus as much
absolutely,
in a school
absolutely. But what
environment.
happens? But then what happens to all the guys who don't display that criteria, who don't
They're
display
more
those
feminine.
symptoms?
But feminine men
Okay,
exist.
can I
It's
read
not a
something,
And
please?
condition.
when you look at
Can I
the statistics in school, you're looking at about 50% of the guys
can
are
I
on the
read
other
something?
side of the spectrum. So
Yeah.
what
But you,
happens to those guys?
why is that not a condition then?
Because the society has deemed that to be acceptable because it fits in
So what you're saying
to
is that so
the
society
normative
made up
rules that we
ADHD.
currently have in the education system. The
So
education
society made
system
up
has,
ADHD.
of course,
So that's
because
what I mean. It's just made up.
the
I don't
diagnosis is
agree
not
with
made
him.
up. The parents that we
Bro,
recognize
Can
within
can I
there
this.
read
should be a
something
name. There
just
should be a
very
name
fast?
for feminine men that just sit there in school and take it. Why is that not a condition?
Can I read something?
Because it
Because
fits
I just
into
finished reading a book
it
about
fits
Exactly,
into
because this whole structure is just made up, and
it's
so is ADHD. That's what I'm just
and
trying to
that's what
say.
I'm trying to
not
say.
really,
That's what I'm trying to say. Wait,
because
before Gabriel
what I
intercedes,
just
I'm gonna
finished
try and
reading a
just say
book.
this, and I'll let you say
Okay.
this. So we have a system. We have a system where all the pieces, like you're building a puzzle, need to work in that system. As soon as a piece doesn't work, you try and go and you sit there and you try and analyze and organize why this piece doesn't fit into your puzzle, and there is where the diagnosis lies, and that's where you start building these charts and you start painting this picture and this narrative of, oh, this person doesn't fit into society. And because if you start looking at for all the studies show that even further into life, as kids go older, as they become adults, as they become teenagers, they become more socially unacceptable for society in the terms of that they become more dangerous to society. And this is whether you medicate them, whether you don't medicate them, whether you give them therapy, whether you don't give them therapy. It doesn't matter. All you're doing is just masking a problem, which eventually is going to blow up. It doesn't matter what you do. All the literature that we know, that all the studies they've done with everything, either medicated or not medicated, at the end of the day, these people end up being dangerous to society. In a certain way, they become either they have a high proclivity for drug addiction, for alcoholism, for not being able to maintain jobs. They basically
Well, because
become
the system isn't built for people with ADHD, but it's not because they have a
exactly,
Can
it's
can
getting
I get
worse, and that is getting
my two
worse,
words?
and that yes, before you say that, and that is getting worse because society becoming hyper focused on task oriented activities and critical thinking. So the more we become
Okay.
more task orientated and more into critical thinking, the more difficult it is and the easier it is to spot these people. That's why it's blowing up like crazy because we're now in a society where everything is so hyper focused and so critical and so detail oriented that it's easy to spot these people from a mile away. 30, 40 years ago, there was loads of people like that, but it was easier to get by because the system wasn't hyper focused on finding these people.
Okay. So I might just very quickly. I disagree with all of you because I come from a different point of view. In the sense, and let me just lay out my case. Okay. association of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and celiac disease. Okay, a brief report. And then this is just a small paragraph. A possible association of celiac disease with psychiatric and psychological disturbances, such as attention deficiency hyperactive disorder, ADHD, right, has been reported repeatedly. The object of this study was to observe whether a gluten free diet could alleviate the behavioral syndromes in patients with celiac disease and ADHD. So, what does that mean? That means that the true cause of ADHD is eating wheat. Wheat is the number one cause of
What?
psychiatric and psychological. And I just finished reading. No, it was a shocker to me. I just read a whole book detailing the science of how that works, how wheat destroys your brain, and how it causes DHD, it causes Alzheimer's, it causes dementias, it causes all kinds of
Well,
sicknesses,
the
psychological
thing is that
disturbance,
I don't think
everything. So,
ADHD is a negative thing. Like some of my favorite people in history were 100%, if they would be living
here's a
nowadays,
study,
they would
and
be classified
this
as
Yeah,
was a
ADHD.
study that was
exactly.
done. They did the study in Italy. They did the study. They did a lot of studies around the world where they, for example,
Like
here you have
Mozart
the first
definitely
study
would have
they
been
did. They
classified
did
as
a
a kid
study.
with
They did a
ADHD.
study
Yeah,
with
yeah.
people aged 7 to 42. This was a study that
Okay,
they
so
did
let me ask you a
in
question,
Italy
Gabriel. Let me ask you a question.
of
Let me ask you a
67
question.
people who were enrolled in a program
I
in Italy
so
from
totally disagree with
2004
those
to
studies.
2008, and they put him on they put him on a free wheat diet, like they stopped the wheat, and they all had positive outcomes out of the
But
study. And the
okay, so
study is,
can I
and it's
ask you
not
a
one; they
question,
have many
Gabriel?
studies,
So for
and you can.
you, I know I believe that you're reading a study, but would you say that a
It's
positive
not one.
outcome?
this is just
It
Okay,
a
doesn't matter
reporting
how
on
many.
of
My
the
question
multitude of
is, do
studies
you
that they did.
believe that a
okay.
positive outcome? Do you believe that a positive outcome in those studies is that kids are now more compliant in school? That's a positive outcome for you.
No, and not at all. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
Well, that's
about
what ADHD
the,
is trying
for
to.
example, I'm talking about
The
obesity.
cure
For
for
example,
ADHD
obesity.
is to make kids
Obesity
more
is
When you
something that
compliant in
you
say
can't
school.
hide.
we're not talking
Okay,
about obesity,
wait a
we're
second.
talking about ADHD, and what we're talking about
Exactly.
is
But let me
how do
so
you even
let me
start?
just
How do you even
okay, so
start
let me just
weighing
say,
those
okay,
observations? Like
okay.
what kind of tests, random trial tests did they do in those studies,
Well,
where
because
they actually looked?
one of the okay, so
What did they
okay,
look at? Critical thinking behavior, or just general behavior became better, or were
okay,
kids more attentive?
why
How did that work?
okay, okay, so why hyperactivity? Because wheat is the
Hyperactivity is
molecule
just one of
that
them.
is
You have
most
ADD,
easily
which is just attention
synthesized.
deficit
Okay,
disorder.
wait a second. Can I finish? Wheat is the molecule that is most easily synthesized by the body to insulin.
Mm.
So right after you eat wheat, your body creates a huge amount of insulin, which gets converted into sugar, into high level sugars that causes all sorts of mood swings and all the. And so if you're on a therapy, basically, if you eat wheat, that's basically you're on a drug. You're on a therapy to spike your sugars every time that you eat wheat. So you eat a pasta, you eat pieces of bread, you eat a cake, you get a sugar. That's therapy. That's what you're doing is
End
a
your whole
therapy to
career now. Can
basically.
I end your whole career? Let me end
Pardon?
your whole career because it's the same point I made for Miguel. Why does this? So wheat affects men more than women.
No,
So
there's
then
the
why are
equal
there more
amount of
cases
people
of?
who suffer. No, there's an equal amount of people who suffer Alzheimer's is are men and women. Alzheimer's, the number one
But we're
cause of
talking about
Alzheimer's
ADHD.
is
Why
Yeah,
are
we're
there
talking.
more? Why are there more men with ADHD than women?
Also, by
Exactly.
the way, I googled
Exactly.
it. The ratio is 3 to 1 versus 16 to 1. ADHD cases between male and female. So for every three
16 to
men,
1.
there's one dude with ADHD, and for every 16 women, there's one girl with ADHD.
that's
Yeah,
very that's
exactly.
a very no that's very simple to explain.
Women eat
When
less
you have
wheat.
when you no
Women
when
eat less
yes
meat.
when your body no when your body produces more insulin, it shuts down the it starts to reduce the how much testosterone you produce. For women it's different because women have estrogen, so
But
they might take it they might.
testosterone is one of the causes of ADHD. Because if you have more testosterone, you'll be more hyperactive. You'll be more wanting to
No,
get out of your seat, wanting to.
the hyperactivity in HDHD is not the cause for
Look,
having high levels of testosterone.
I
It's
think
the amount of insulin that you have
the
in
issue
your
with this
in your
is
thing
No,
is
system.
that
because
this
kids with ADHD, like they want to, they're more violent. They want to punch other kids. They
Yeah,
want
so
to.
mood swings.
no, it's
Exactly,
not
mood
mood
swings.
swings.
it's not
I
mood swings. It's not
It's
mood
not mood
swings, dude.
swings.
It's
It's
got
not
nothing to
mood
do with
swings, dude.
mood.
It's about being a
It's
kid.
you
It's
having to be
it's
in a
a
chair.
hormonal
It's about having to
hormonal
be in a
imbalance.
chair
It's a
for 8 hours.
hormonal imbalance.
It's not even that.
It's
It's not
not.
even that.
It's
Guys,
not
listen.
hormonal
I've been studying
imbalance.
this stuff for years. Believe you me. Believe you
The
me.
thing is
It's
that
got
at
nothing
the
to
end of
do.
the day, let's
It's
say
a
we stop getting
brain
this
thing.
weed.
It's a brain thing. It's got nothing to do. It's something that happens in your brain. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain that causes the synapses in your brain to not run as effectively as someone who doesn't have this diagnosis.
Yeah,
It's
but
very
what I'm trying to
simple.
say is that in
It's very
Gabriel's
simple.
case, the outcome of eliminating wheat from everyone's diet,
It could have
his
probably
positive
improved their
his positive
behavior. I
outcome
don't disagree with that.
his positive outcome is that these kids will have
Okay.
better behavior in school. But what I'm trying to say is that
Yeah.
kids shouldn't have good
No,
behavior in
no, no,
school
no, no.
because the school
No, no, but
system
dude,
is an
it's
No.
not
oppressive
even a
system.
behavioral thing,
Okay.
dude. Some of the kids with ADHD have excellent behavior. It's got nothing to do with behavior. It's the ability to be able to think critically. It's sitting down with a kid and trying to teach him what 2 plus 2 is, and you not being able to understand why this kid doesn't understand that if you have 2 blocks and you get 2 other blocks, all the blocks together equals 4, and this kid doesn't get it. And you can draw a million pictures and do all the fucking songs you want and do all the happy dance and the whole thing. The kid is not gonna fucking get it because
Yeah,
he's got a
but
chemical imbalance
no, no,
in
no,
his
no, no.
brain.
I
It
think
doesn't allow him to understand that 2 blocks plus 2 blocks equals 4 blocks.
the problem
I've been there.
the
But
problem I
it's the
have with
environment.
the
It's
problem
not the environment, dude. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain that the kid will not understand that he will just not get it. And the more you pressure him, the more resistance there is in
so
his
it's like
brain
dyslexia.
to go against the idea.
Can
Yes,
you want
literally,
me
it
to read
is.
the list of
When you
symptoms?
see it, when you
Symptoms.
understand it, truly, when you experience it
Hyperkinesis.
yourself with one of these children,
Hyperkinesis.
you
Look,
will understand
Uh,
100%. You will be like, damn,
let me say
there's
anxiety
no
something.
hope.
disorders.
There's
Let
no
me say
hope.
something.
Psychiatric disorders.
The problem
And
that
the
I
thing
have.
the
Learning
amazing thing is, this is
language
wait
and
before you say this.
learning
The amazing thing
uh,
is the
difficulties.
second you medicate it and you sit that
Disorders of
child down,
IQ.
boom, he
Verbal
gets it
performance
in
and
two
full
seconds.
Espérate,
scale.
están hablando los dos al
Oh,
mismo tiempo.
No, I'm just reading
no,
all
yo
the
estoy
symptoms
hablando, Gabriel está leyendo.
exactamente.
Dale para allá.
I think it would be a net benefit
So look,
anyway to
this
remove
is
wheat
my
from
opinion.
people's diets, especially processed
I
I
wheat.
agree with Gabriel 100%, but I
But
don't think he knows what he's talking
so
about.
look,
I
I think
just literally don't think
the
that he
problem
knows
with
what he's talking
this
about.
is that I think ADHD and all these things like dyspraxia and like there's loads of these like weird diseases or whatever conditions that you want to call it, and I think they're just
Hmm.
excuses for people not being able to do what they want to do, or like, oh, I can't do that because I have ADHD, oh, I can't do this because, and I think it's just a bunch of excuses people put on
No,
themselves, and that
disagree,
makes them
disagree,
not be able to do anything. People
disagree.
with
The thing is that
Give you
ADHD,
another,
I
give you
the
when
another
you're
reason
example.
people with ADHD do bad at school is because they're not interested in school. People with
You
ADHD
will
can do
understand this.
loads
You
of good
will understand
things.
this 100%. Okay, you go to a field, right? And
Yeah,
there's a bunch of kids.
yeah,
A bunch of kids show up to learn how to play
yeah,
football.
yeah,
In 2 seconds, you, as somebody who's played football your entire
yeah.
life,
I know who's
you
good
will
and
be
who's
able to
bad.
see the kids who will be able
Yeah,
to pick up the sport, and you will be able
yeah,
to see
yeah,
immediately the kids
yeah,
who will not.
yeah. Like
Right?
I don't even need to see them
Why?
playing football. I could just tell by
Exactly.
how
You
they.
just see
Yeah,
the way they walk on the pitch,
yeah,
and you know this kid is never going to play this sport. I don't care how many hours he practices,
yeah.
or what he does, or if
But
he gets a personal trainer,
but
or
that kid
if he
doesn't
gets
have a
Messi to
disease.
move in with him.
But that
No,
kid doesn't
he
have a
doesn't have a
disease. He's just not good at
until you
football.
say he does. No, if the whole world hyper focused on football, then you would literally create a diagnosis where that kid would walk in and you would tell the parents, I'm sorry, your son he cannot play football disease. Okay? We saw him walking on the pitch and he's never going to make it because he cannot play football disease. And then Gabriel's going to come and he's going to say, oh, that's because he's eating too much wheat. Literally, that's what's going to happen. And then, we're going to come up with this new dietary requirement for this kid. so that he can. And I agree with you 100%. They did the same study with sugar, where they